Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to go over the Ruger RXM, the initial review. I was able to pick this up from a local box store for relatively cheap at $300, just a little bit less after a 10% coupon and some discount gift cards. And let's just get right into it, because I think this is an important gun, and I really don't need another Glock-Clone. However, I think this just might be the best one out there. In fact, it might as well be the Glock should have been making. So without further ado, we get our fancy trigger lock. Obviously the gun with a magazine in it. Obviously it will be clear. And a spare Magpul P-Mag, which these are fine. Not the sexiest mags in the world, but they do function, they do work, and they are relatively reliable. Again, they do kind of stick out a little bit too past the bottom of the gun, which is fine. Now, onto the gun itself. We have the biggest upgrade to it, in my opinion, or the biggest change. One of the biggest complaints on anybody who talks about Glocks and why they hate them, the grip. They changed the grip angle. It is no longer the Glock grip angle where you have to angle your wrists. And in fact, it is more akin to a 1911 grip angle. And so that's all been fixed. Not only that, but you can swap these out. So in this case, I've already swapped this one out to an FDE, same size, G19, but they apparently are making Glock 26 grips and 17 grips. So if you got bigger hands, need a little bit more meat on the gun, you can do that. Now, the other cool thing is that the aftermarket is showing up for this gun. You can buy aluminum grips from a couple different companies already, and I believe there is also one in the works that is going to be a steel version, but I haven't seen that in person yet. Now, obviously, getting into the features of the gun, we have a very standard Glock 19 size barrel. Nothing too different there. Same kind of similar slide, some front serrations, which are great because, again, this is based off a Glock Gen 3 clone, which at the time wouldn't have it, but obviously modern Glocks do. And an optics cut. Now, this optics cut, in my opinion, is an improvement over the MOS because it doesn't require plastic plates. I don't know who at Glock thought that was a good idea. Maybe with the Gen V that is coming out, or the Glock V, they might hopefully update that or change that, which is also, again, kind of why I decided to make this video, because Ruger is now under attack by the same people who basically forced Glock's hand into changing it. So we'll get a little bit more into that later. Moving down to the gun, or before we move down to the gun, the sights, I have to say, are some of my favorite on a factory gun. Blacked out rear, very visible front sight, I mean massive, and it is easy to, they're not quite suppressor height, but it does easily co-witness here, and yeah, they're just great. I mean, they're steel sights, again, an improvement over the plastic sights over Glock, just fantastic. Nothing really to say too much about the slide release here. I think it's the same, it might be a tad bit bigger than your traditional Glock, which is fine, and nothing different with the takedown or the takedown lever, and I think maybe a slightly enlarged magazine release, barely, but there is a nice little scallop here, so you do get a little bit easier access to it rather than a traditional Glock without this. So that is kind of nice. It does keep it out of the way, so when you are gripping the gun, you don't accidentally hit it. But it is easy to get to. Of course, being a Glock-Clone, this gun does in fact take Glock magazines, which I'm sure you already knew, and it does have your traditional Glock trigger. So there's kind of a lot of mush there, kind of take up before the wall, and then you have your rolling brake. Now, Glock triggers, in my opinion, are kind of just the gold standard. They're very average. There's nothing amazing about them, but I also think they're heavily blown out of proportion, that they're terrible. Believe me, there are definitely worse triggers out there than a Glock trigger. Taurus G2C I can think of, as well as hinge type triggers I'm just not a huge fan of. there are definitely other guns that are pretty terrible. I think a Glock trigger is kind of, again, just your bare minimum, your average trigger. And this one, I don't know what the breakage is on it, so we'll just test that real quick. If I can get some meat on it. There we go. Problem is I gotta get that blade safety activated. 5 pounds. So that one is right at 5 pounds, which is actually pretty good because I think 5 pounds to 6 pounds is about your average Glock trigger, somewhere in there. So 5 pounds is, again, pretty average, kind of your duty pistol, decent for concealed carry. Now, the other amazing feature, and if you made it this far, is kind of the part that I'm most excited about, is because this is a Gen 3 Glock, you get all the aftermarket support of a Gen 3. And my God, is there a ton of different options for this thing. So if I wanted to, say, have a Gen 17 slide, well, guess what? You know, I can put another slide on there. This one has a ramjet on it. Voila, there we go. I have a little bit longer length, a little bit more muzzle velocity, and now a compensator. If I wanted an even longer slide, crazy, I know, but you can do that too. Now you have a G34 length slide on your Glock 19, or in this case your Ruger RXM, and there you go. You basically have a full-size gun. You could probably add a mag well there too if you wanted to. But again, there are just so many options, so many ways to customize this gun, and again, just all the features straight out of the box. I think it's just an insanely good firearm, and for the dollar to value, it's pretty hard to beat. Again, this grip is nothing like terrible too. The texture is actually really good, kind of borderlines between I don't know, it's not going to scratch you by any means if you're like carrying this, but man, if you put pressure on it, it really does dig in, which is really nice. You have a memory, thumb memory location here too, so, when you're gripping the gun, you kind of can feel that texture up above there. But yeah, overall, I didn't need to buy this gun. It was just cheap enough, and it was cool enough. I had to add it to the collection. And if I'm being honest, if Ruger makes a 17 length version, I'm definitely going to just buy that too. So, anyways, thanks for watching, guys. See you on the next one. Stay safe out there.